In this video, I'm going to show you something that you may have heard before or at least long suspected to be true. And that's the influence of corporate interests like Pepsico and cereal makers on the food you eat, and the impact it has on nutrition professionals that are supposed to be protecting the public's health and their recommendations for what is considered as healthy. Today, I'll show you definitive proof of this relationship and the impact it has on you and your clients and their families, as well as where to get better nutritional information and who you can trust in this area so you can get better results for you and your clients. Let's dive in. Skeptics and critics have long speculated on the seemingly behind-the-scenes relationship between food companies and food recommendations, particularly financial donations and sponsorship from food companies to the people that make these guidelines and tell us what to eat, and the immense potential for conflicts of interest. And for the longest time, it was all speculation, until this past October when a bombshell article was published, bringing light to truly how bad the situation is. So here's the deal. Back in October of 2022, a peer-reviewed article was published in the academic journal Public Health Nutrition, titled "The Corporate Capture of the Nutrition Profession in the USA, the Case of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics." And here are the main findings from the study and why they matter to you. I got my notes here. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is formerly known as the American Dietitian Association, or the ADA, which helps to create dietary guidelines and is the governing body that represents 112,000 registered dietitians in the US. They've been long criticized for their relationship with the food and beverage company, including financial relationships. So there's nothing new here. But what is new is this. So what is new is this report dug up the extent of these financial contributions, approximately 15 million USD between 2011 and 2017, coming from companies like Nestle, PepsiCo, Kellogg's, and General Mills. And here's the bombshell. This is the part that gets a little bit crazy. Furthermore, the Academy actually owns stock in some of these companies. Okay, and it gets even worse here, so listen to this. Adding insult to injury, the report documents internal emails from an employee of the Academy that defined a sponsorship as when a company pays a fee to the Academy in return for a defined specific right or benefit. And corresponding to this sponsorship deal with Abbott, which happened at the time, this is around 2015, who are the creators of Pediasure, which is an infant nutritional product. The actual email said how the dietitians could use their influence to push this product in pediatric offices. Okay, so this is really messy. And you can see the issue here in plain sight. So we have the nutritional experts and their governing body who make recommendations, create nutritional guidelines, and are supposed to protect the public, are taking money from corporations who are selling us all kinds of food. The main criticism is aimed at the Academy here. Comes from the study's co-author and executive director of the US Right to Know, Gary Ruskins. He's quoted as saying, and this isn't in the peer-reviewed article, this is in another article, the Academy, it's incredibly influential. So if the Academy is corrupt, the nutritional policy in the US is going to be corrupt. And he goes on to say, if we're ever going to solve the problems of obesity and diabetes in the US and elsewhere, then we're going to need to have to tackle the corruption in our health institutions. Okay, so a couple things to point out here. Although corporations and the food that they produce may influence public health problems in the US and the developed world, they are not the cause of them. And speaking as a former nutrition researcher, you need to put this into perspective. The scientific process, it ain't cheap. When we design and carry out studies, they require money. And corporations who make money, they want to spend it. There's a back and forth relationship here which has some inherent bias, but there are systems in place to minimize it or at least declare it. And keep in mind, this type of financial investment, it isn't limited just to research. Corporations will also sponsor activities like conferences, as well as infrastructure for the scientists to carry out their work. In most cases, this type of relationship is in plain sight, and it's required to be declared because of the potential for conflict of interest. This isn't going away, and to be completely honest, it shouldn't, because it might be the price to pay for conducting science and creating a body of knowledge. Okay, but back to the story. Although there wasn't much buzz to the story when it was first published, in early December, The Guardian picked up the story and it started to pick up some steam on social media. And right around the week before Christmas, I started to see it being talked and posted about a lot. Now, the Academy did respond back in an official statement, saying that the report included false and misleading information. Here's what the report didn't include. include. So here's what we got. The Academy has stringent sponsor and sponsorship guidelines, and that these are set up to remove all influence from sponsors. But keep in mind, this is somewhat impossible given how much money is transferred, as well as the financial investments. They are conducted by an independent company. And one of their major criticism in the peer-reviewed article, the first article there, was that the Academy actually altered a position statement for a donor. And they had said that the Academy has never altered a position statement to benefit a donor. So some good counterpoints and defense to a somewhat aggressive paper that may in fact have its own self-interests. And they do make it seem that this opinion is coming from one singular group. But here's the deal, this isn't just one opinion or concern coming from one group. This type of issue has been long documented. World-renowned nutritionist and public health advocate Marion Nestle has long documented this issue. Starting with her book Food Politics, which was published in 2002, Dr. Nestle has been studying and bringing awareness to this relationship for a long time. Check out this.
What we're supposed to eat is really pretty well defined. I'm an American, and these are the American Dietary Guidelines from 2015 to 2020, and they say that what you're supposed to be eating is fruits, vegetables, meat, poultry, and other kinds of foods, relatively unprocessed. And what you're not supposed to be eating is what we pejoratively call junk foods, highly processed foods that have a lot of the nutritional value removed, that are very high in calories, salt, and sugar. Now, the problem with that is that if you're going to be dealing with the question of obesity, you want to eat better and eat the kinds of foods that are recommended. You want to eat less in general, and you want to move more. But the problem is that all of those are not particularly good for the food industry. And we have a food industry that is very large, Nestle, that is very large and makes most of its profits from the foods, the exact same foods that are least recommended by public health nutrition people.
So clearly she's been lecturing on this dynamic for an extended period of time. She actually published a very similar paper in 2007. So that was titled Food Company Sponsorship and Nutrition Research in Professional Activities, a Conflict of Interest, which ironically enough was published in the same journal as the same article this fall. Maybe they have it out for corporation. Anyways, she's about as trustworthy as they get. So even if this news isn't new, it's still important and adds to this case. The case around the relationship between food companies and nutrition experts and guidelines. And here's what this means for you and your clients. There is no specific product that any of these corporations are making or producing that are undermining the health of anyone in developed countries, especially when it comes to things like obesity and chronic disease. And with that being said, there are very few foods and nutrients that people can consider bad. But there is one class of food that is in the bad column, and that's ultra-processed foods, which are defined as industrial formulations with 5 or more ingredients. We're talking things like flavored potato chips and candy bars and sweetened breakfast cereals. It's still very important to limit the consumption of these due to ample evidence that if you eat too much of them, you actually overeat them, and it can lead to weight gain, among other things. And here's where it gets tricky, going back to the Academy. And there's some controversy around this exact thing. It happened in 2015. So listen to this story. So the Academy actually agreed to allow a company, in this case Kraft, put a seal on their package that said kids eat healthy. So it was like this independent sticker or seal on Kraft singles packaging, the processed cheese, super processed cheese in the individually wrapped packaging. And this suggested that it had an independent source verified the nutritional value of this product. Critics quickly pointed out that this is in fact not true based on the actual product's nutritional value. And actually, as you can guess it and read this, it's actually not classified by the government as cheese. It's classified as a pasteurized prepared cheese product, and it includes other dyes and chemicals. So ultimately the Academy took away the stamp, but not until after it was pointed out by critics. I'm no stranger to a Kraft single or Kraft sangle as they're known in my household. They make the best egg sandwiches, but let's not kid ourselves, they are not healthy. And if that's not influence, I do not know what is. So it's important to be skeptical, my friends. No foods are good or bad, and that's why it's really important to understand the science of nutrition. But if it seems way too processed, it's probably wise not to eat it very often. And when you're reading research or news, it's important to critically think. Where is this information coming from, and are there any conflicts of interest? Are there any vested interests? Is there any money being passed around? It's important to think about this stuff as we interpret the information. Now keep in mind, and I want to make this crystal clear, none of these individual foods are to blame for the obesity crisis. If they were, I would be the first one to tell you. But consuming too much of anything, particularly ultra-processed foods, by industry food giants is not a good thing. And when these food choices are propped up and included as the food that you should eat, in guidelines as a thing that you should eat more of, that's when we run into issues, especially when it's incentivized by the people that fund the studies. So I hope you found that helpful. Now, as great as all those tips are, if you're really serious about starting a nutrition coaching business, the next thing I'll have you do is check out this video I've linked up right here. Stay on the drama train and learn more about the recent changes to MyFitnessPal. So make sure to check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video.